Fairness. Fairness is something which should be, well, the standard, isn't it? Just look into your organization and then look on different positions. The organizational level where people start, the technical level where people develop into supervisor and management position, and then the management and senior executives up to the top 3 layers of leadership, board level, and the senior management. Looks fair, doesn't it? Oh, it doesn't. That's exactly our topic for today. And when it comes to injustice, as you, of course, can expect, we had quite a number of topics in the recent past which sticked to that, well, overall topic. When we look into justice, first I have to thank you for sending me the emails which you sent me. I received way more emails than I expected for that short amount of time we are running this podcast. If you think about topics or ideas or questions you have, just email me at nb@nb-networks.com, and I guarantee you, as I will today, everything stays 100% anonymous. That's, of course, the standard. So some people ask, what shall I do when I have someone in the leadership team who doesn't stick to the rules? And I now will give you an example of that. We, of course, have the lockdown, and the lockdown is still in place in many different countries. Still, of course, we are now entering the new normal, which you heard about, the new normal, which includes Donald Trump tweeting about violence or fake news about ballot papers, being fact-checked by Twitter, and then telling Twitter that he thinks of regulating them. In the same world, we have Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings arguing if or if not the lockdown has been broken by them. And now people say, well, someone in my leadership team obviously thinks that rules are a bit more flexible than they actually are. And when we're now entering the new normal, some people say, well, we found out that working from home is actually possible. And it's motivating for some people. Some people said, I like to come back to the office because I want to have a clear separation between work in the office and then coming home where I do not have any work, which is completely understandable. But quite a number of people said, I would like to work from home. It's easier for me. And of course, I don't have to do the 1 hour and 15 minutes or even more commute, one direction, of course. So per day, I have 2 hours, 2.5 hours more time for me, which makes it easier for me to get my kids to school, pick them up again, etc., etc. Also at home, I have a bit more flexibility. And now reality hits people hard. I received an email where it said, we are now getting into the new normal. And of course, they set up a project which they call the new normal, very creative. And the first thing is that, of course, they now have a bit more home office, although they really dragged anyone back in they could. And they said, we're going to have meetings every day. And these meetings happen at 8:30 in the morning and at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Because, and I quote, this is the time where it fits best into all our calendars. So, first, that's not true. It doesn't fit best into the calendars. When you just entered the office, you normally have a number of emails, a number of tasks which you want to get off your desk before you start the meetings in your day, during your day. And second, it is blindingly obvious that the only thing you do is putting in a control mechanism where you simply want to make sure that people show up in the morning and stay the number of hours you pay them for. If you are still thinking in the I paid you for this amount of hour kind of leadership, it means you are really on a beginner's level. And a beginner's level means that you honestly you really haven't understood that you pay people for the results, not for spending time sitting on your office chair. So, well, what can we do? And it gets worse, by the way, it gets worse. We have a couple of people there who, it is a logistics company and they work in the disposition department, which means they have to decide which truck goes where. Quite a complicated task because you have to act in real time. 3 people working together. And then people said, well, we'd like to work on site, but now the problem is, when we do it remotely, we are a bit slower, and these couple of minutes add up when we look at the number of trucks that we basically lose half an hour of working time per day where trucks either run empty or just stand around, which of course is not great. On the other hand, when we come back, we cannot keep social distancing rules. What shall we do? And the result? I mean, this is a clear dilemma. You have to decide between rules of social distancing, which are set in stone, and an economic outcome of your organization. And for me, it's blindingly obvious when it comes to health of the employees where to go. This manager, however, told people, you will come back, don't be bothered about social distancing, it's all going to be fine, and don't worry, if you don't come back, there won't be 3 people sitting there for a long time. So first, threatening your employees is never the right way. It's very old-fashioned leadership, which normally people derive from Hollywood actors' behavior like in Wolf of Wall Street. Toxic masculinity, where people think that they have done something right by just making a strong and brash statement. The opposite is the case. When you have a situation like that, of course you have to tell your people that they have to stay at home because social distancing comes first. But now, when people say, let's assume that sooner or later we will all come back, and then we have the dilemma, home office, yes or no. If you are a smart leader, you allow people the maximum amount of home office as long as they do their job, and you only look in the results. You don't look for a certain amount of hours spent, because let's be honest, this whole hours spent, it is nothing else than an envious leader who thinks other people work less hours than I do and they still get the job done. Yeah? Or maybe they have better time management. When a German says that, it should mean quite something. So, offer people home office. The funny thing about the whole, with home office, of course, offer them remote office, working from home. So, the funny thing about remote office, of course, is as soon as I step in front of leaders and I ask them 2 questions. Question number 1, do you support remote work? And they are very calm and very hesitant and say, well, we don't know, could work, could not work. If I simply ask, before I ask the remote work question, if I only ask, are you interested in reducing your real estate costs and rental costs by 1/3 next year? They immediately jump over the table and say, yes, yes, yes. And then I say, the solution is remote work. And suddenly, they have a very different attitude towards remote work. So when we now see that we're entering this new normal and people say, should we have home office, yes or no? The answer is offer them as much home office, offer them as much remote work as possible, because it will lower your rental cost and people will be happier because suddenly they can save on the commute, not only the money, but, which is far more important, the time. I received quite a number of messages on social media. Feel free to add me on any portal. I'm basically on every piece of social media, Facebook, Twitter, you find me on all of them. And quite a number of people asked me how to deal with a situation like the situation with George Floyd. Obviously, people feel insecure, which is normal in these situations. But I think they also feel insecure because they've seen quite a number of very strange behavior. George Floyd, a black man, killed by a policeman. And the consequence of that were riots all over the country. I'm recording this podcast. It's about 20 minutes past midnight on June the 1st. And I still on TV see riots, which are like in a war-like scenario, happening night after night after night. And one of the reasons is because immediately people realize that when you mourn and you're very sad about something, when a famous Hollywood actor died, when a famous football player died, all over social media, people are and say, oh, so sorry that he or she left us, rest in peace, left, right, and center. Now we have the case of George Floyd, and it didn't even take a day until the first people, senior leaders, professional speakers from the industry, from my industry, not only didn't address the issue at all, but only posted, well, is it really police violence? I think we need the numbers first, and then we need to examine the numbers, and we shouldn't jump to quick conclusions. Even when you say that this is your scientific approach, which could be correct, you cannot address it that way, especially not when you are part of the most privileged group. And let's face it, when you are male, white, and straight, you are by definition privileged by birth. My self-employment would have gone completely different if I were not male and if I were not white, and I'm fully aware of that. So the first thing I have to address, and each and every one of us have to address, is that when you address this issue, first, you are very sorry for what happened, you are very sorry for the loss, and then, of course, you address their family and friends. Then you have to address if you like it or not. And by the way, if you don't like it, you're basically racist. When you do not address that you cannot feel how it is to be discriminated because you weren't discriminated in your life. If you do not address this issue, you missed the point straight away. And everything which you want to say, which can come after, is completely invalid because you basically say, I am privileged, I get along with it, and if other people don't, that's how life is. And that is unacceptable. And now people look in their own organizations, look in senior management teams, look on board level and say, well, when it comes to diversity, we have a bit of a special approach, don't we? Especially in the financial industry where people say, oh, we're just conservative, that's how life is. And every single time I hear that, especially in the city of London, I tell them Monzo, which is a, meanwhile, major financial banking market participant, I think in their last sustainability report had more than 20% of the people LGBT. So if you look in your organization and you're completely non-diverse, it's not because the industry is conservative, it's because you have done just lots of things wrong, and there's help. So what can you do? When you want to address an issue about discrimination, first, acknowledge that it's not you who was discriminated. Second, it is not the time that you question that the issue is an issue, because it obviously is an issue. When today you still think, oh, we need numbers if there actually is police violence, you really missed the plot. Third, when you now want to see in your organization, how do career paths work? And by the way, if you're when you get into arguments on social media, be prepared that people are way smarter than they were a couple of months or a couple of years ago. I'll just give you an example. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk tweeted, so that's Twitter for the ones of you who are not on it, and if you're not, you should at least join it to see what's going on there. Charlie Kirk tweeted, if you loot, riot and destroy, you lose all moral credibility in my eyes to protest injustice. Well, that's of course a piece of opinion which you can put out there. Of course, it is deeply non-empathy, and of course, it is deeply inappropriate to make this your only post about the whole issue. Still, of course, people civilized. First comment is, so the Boston Tea Party was bad then? There we have a point. So was the Boston Tea Party bad? And then Charlie, then someone else commented, the Boston Tea Party happened after years of protests fell on the deaf ears of the king and the parliament. It was the only avenue left. Well, and immediately someone, of course, commented and said, you ran face first into the point and still missed it anyway. So when you make a point, you must be aware that when you have unconscious bias, there's a reason why it's called unconscious. Get a professional coach to make it conscious. I don't want to show off my private life here, but as an openly gay living man, what I see in senior management in many companies is shocking. And when some people who know me for longer now listen to this and think, oh, I didn't expect that he's gay, he doesn't look gay. That's exactly part of the problem. Just because I'm not wearing hot pants and waving a rainbow flag with me on my way to work still can mean that someone is not straight, although they don't behave in the way you expect someone to behave. We are not living in stereotypeville. Unfortunately, we often try to hire people who are the same as we are, and that makes teams non-diverse, and that of course makes the results worse. And now people ask, what can we do to make things better? And here's a 3-step plan what you should do. So step number 1, qualification. Of course, qualification is helpful, but qualification, a piece of paper, and especially when I'm in the UK or in the US, many people who deal with recruiting often tell me, anyone in this country has a degree anyway, so it's completely worthless. Well, when it's that worthless, why are you still keen on it? So when you need a certain qualification because the regulation tells you so, I'll just give you an example. When you want to hire a medical doctor, then of course certain qualifications must be met in the first place. You can't just work your way up to become a doctor or something like that and suddenly you're an MD. This is not how it works. But in most industries, so for example, especially when people work in sales, as the perfect example, you can of course have a degree, and it's not bad to have one, but it doesn't determine if you will be successful or not. Because in most industries, sales works in a very different way. Qualification is helpful, but it cannot be the only reason why you hire or do not hire someone, and it cannot be the only reason why you either accept someone in your team or you do not accept someone in your team, or promote someone or do not promote someone. Step number 2, legitimization. Legitimization means, are they on a social level accepted by the team and by the clients? You can have, and I saw that live, highly skilled engineer, and I was sitting there for a presentation coaching, a highly skilled engineer with the perfect qualification for the job, went to the client side and was, even without knowing, was so unbelievably arrogant, telling the client, without even noticing it, I have the clue and I hand you clue in generous amounts and you still don't get it. And of course, that engineer, although highly qualified, coming from elite university, didn't sell a single project. Other people who worked their way up sold many projects because the economy was booming. So here we see that besides qualification, we also need legitimization. That's step number 2. So do not hire only based on one or only based on the other. Always look where is the middle ground where you can meet. But if someone would ask me what's more important, qualification or legitimization, especially when you are in a non-regulated industry and you make a non-regulated job choice, getting the job done is more important than a piece of paper. Let's face it, once you cross the age of 30, no one cares about it anyway, what you studied 10 years ago. Step number 3 is consistency. And consistency means that someone is able to deliver this job not only once, but constantly on a very high level, or at least on the expected level. I'll just give you an example here. A company hires two very young salespeople, and immediately within their first month, they win 2 major projects, which no one expected. So they were immediately promoted way higher than people who were in the company for a way longer time. And a year later, both of these young superstar talents were gone because, they realized it was a bit of a lucky punch. They won these 2 projects and they did very well there, no question about that, but still, they weren't able to repeat it. Of course, when someone does something well, they expect something in return, so a promotion might be the option. Still, you have to distinguish between just someone having a lucky moment and consistently delivering great work, especially when you are, for example, the new CEO, you are the new leader in the team, and you have people there who are there for a very long time. Value their work, because the people who are there for a very long time, delivering consistently high quality of work, these are the ones that pay your bills. Having a rock star on the team is great, but still, always be sure that this is not just a one-off, but can be delivered constantly. These are the 3 steps: qualification, legitimization, and consistency. Of course, often people ask, what happens if I need some more information about that? Do you have anything in writing? And of course, often people ask, besides the recorded podcast, is there any kind of live session with you? And of course, the real question which often people ask is there anything for free which is live with you? And yes, we have that. It's only accessible when you are registered with our expert letter, which you can do at expert-letter.nb-networks.com. It's 100% content, guaranteed ad-free. We never advertise via the expert letter. And the invites for the free events with me are just right in there. And these events also are 100% content driven. So I now wish you all the best implementing what I just told you in your organization. Of course, I'm happy to help. If you'd like me to, just contact me and drop me an email. But now, the only thing I have to say, what I always say at the end of the podcast, thank you very much for your time.